The streets of Las Vegas were always alive, but Tyler had perfected the art of moving through them unnoticed. The city pulsed with energy, neon lights flashing, drunken voices rising and falling, the occasional distant wail of sirens. But inside his black Challenger, parked across from his condo, there was nothing but silence. A deep, suffocating quiet as he sat and waited, his gaze locked onto the building's entrance. He shouldn't have had to do this. No husband should find himself trailing his own wife like a detective shadowing a cheating partner. But here he was, hands gripping the steering wheel, rough from years of hard work, eyes sharp and unblinking. Jenna had changed in ways that weren't the natural shifts of a marriage. The new dresses more expensive than before. A perfume that had never been hers. Longer showers. Late-night calls spoken in hushed tones. Tyler wasn't naive. He had spent years studying liars, learning the micro-expressions, the nervous tics, the inconsistencies that gave them away. And Jenna? She was careless. At first, it was business networking. Then it was drinks with the girls. Eventually, she stopped making excuses altogether, brushing past him at the door like he was an afterthought, just another fixture in their home. That was her first mistake. The second? Underestimating him. At exactly 11:42 in the evening, the street outside their upscale beachfront condo was eerily quiet. The warm Vegas air carried the faint crash of waves against the artificial shoreline. Then, Tyler saw it, a sleek black Aston Martin Vanquish gliding up to the curb, cutting through the night like a predator. He knew the car before he even laid eyes on the driver. Victor Langston, a man with more wealth than wisdom, owner of the Crimson Palace, a haven for high rollers who didn't know when to walk away. He was tall, perpetually tanned, always dressed in tailored suits that screamed influence. His smile had the kind of charm that masked something dangerous, calculated, confident, ruthless. Jenna stepped out of the passenger seat, and a slow burn ignited in Tyler's chest. She looked too polished, too put together for someone who had just been out for casual drinks. The black silk dress she wore clung to her body, plunging low in the front, scandalously high at the thigh. Her heels clicked against the pavement, each step deliberate, poised. She leaned back into the car, laughing too freely, too comfortably, before Victor's hand slid up her bare thigh. Tyler's jaw tightened. His fingers flexed, curling into a fist against the leather of the steering wheel. Not yet. Jenna murmured something, then flashed Victor a slow, knowing smile before stepping away. The man smirked as if he had already claimed victory before the game had even begun. The car pulled off, disappearing into the neon blur of the strip. Tyler exhaled slowly, not in anger, not in disbelief, but in control. She thought she was playing a game. She had no idea who she was up against. Instead of taking the elevator, he climbed the stairs, each step measured, deliberate. His penthouse was on the 15th floor, offering a breathtaking view of the city, a view Jenna used to love. No? She probably didn't even glance at it. The door was unlocked. He stepped inside. The scent hit him first, an unfamiliar perfume, expensive, mingling with the faint aroma of wine. The dim glow from the city lights illuminated the living room, where Jenna stood near the floor-to-ceiling window, phone in hand, still wearing that damn silk dress. She hadn't noticed him yet, too absorbed in her reflection as she adjusted her lipstick, admiring herself in the glass. Tyler leaned casually against the doorway. Fun night. Jenna jumped, spinning to face him, her eyes momentarily wide before she recovered, masking her surprise with a practiced smirk. Jesus, Tyler. You scared the hell out of me. He stepped forward smoothly. I get that a lot. She flicked a glance at her phone, subtly flipping it face down on the table. Yeah, just drinks with the girls. You. He watched her closely. The way she kept her posture relaxed, yet her fingers twitched ever so slightly, a tell. Won a few hands. Lost a few. The usual. She faked a yawn, stretching her arms over her head, a deliberate move meant to shift his focus. I'm exhausted. Think I'll shower and head to bed. Tyler didn't move. Instead, he smiled, slow and knowing. Yeah, he said evenly. You should get some rest. Big day tomorrow. For a brief moment, Jenna hesitated, sensing something in his tone, but she didn't push. She turned and disappeared down the hallway toward the bathroom. Tyler remained where he was, standing in the dim light of their home, watching, waiting. She thought she was getting away with it. Thought she had him fooled. That was her third mistake. Pulling out his phone, he opened his notes app and typed one line. Game on. Tyler didn't sleep that night. He sat in his office, a small room tucked away in the back of their penthouse, illuminated only by the neon glow bleeding through the window. A glass of bourbon rested on the desk beside him, untouched, condensation forming on the dark wood. Tyler's laptop was open, filled with pages of research, casino records, high-stakes game logs, and surveillance footage from the Crimson Palace. Every piece of evidence painted a picture of Victor Langston, a man who believed he was untouchable, a self-made billionaire in the gambling industry. Victor had built his empire through deception, manipulation, and exploiting others' weaknesses. His inflated ego made him reckless, convinced that he was always the smartest man in the room. That kind of arrogance always led to mistakes. Tyler was ready to exploit them. Jenna had grown too comfortable. By the next morning, she moved around the penthouse with the ease of someone who had no fear of being caught. She hummed softly to herself in the kitchen, wrapped in a silk robe, no doubt a gift from Victor. When Tyler entered the room, she barely reacted, simply offering him a lazy smile before taking a sip of her coffee. "You were up late," she mused, tilting her head slightly. Tyler gave a casual shrug. "Yeah, just thinking." Something flickered in her expression, curiosity, maybe even suspicion. She held his gaze a second longer than necessary before setting her cup down. "About what?" He returned her look with a slow smile. "Money." Jenna let out a soft laugh, the sound light but measured. "Of course. My husband, the poker shark." Her tone was playful, but beneath it was something calculating. She thought she had the upper hand, believed Tyler was just another oblivious man she could manipulate until he was no longer useful. He let her keep believing that. "I've got something big coming up," Tyler said, watching her reaction carefully. "A private game. High stakes." Jenna's interest peaked instantly. She leaned against the counter, arms crossing under her chest in a way that caused her robe to slip slightly. An intentional move, one she always used when she wanted something. "Oh, with who?" Tyler sipped his coffee, letting the moment stretch before casually dropping the bombshell. "Victor Langston." For half a second, Jenna froze. Just half a second. But it was enough. A flash of panic crossed her face before she quickly masked it with a smirk. "Victor," she repeated smoothly. "That's unexpected. You two don't exactly run in the same circles." "We do now." Jenna tried to hide her unease, adjusting her robe as if she wasn't affected. "How did that happen?" Tyler kept his tone casual, as if it wasn't a big deal. "Ran into him at the Crimson Palace last night. We got to talking. Turns out he has a thing for high-stakes poker. He invited me to a private game." Jenna was silent just a beat too long before she flipped her hair over her shoulder and let out a light laugh. "Well, if anyone can take his money, it's you." She was pretending to be supportive, but Tyler could see the wheels turning in her head, the realization that her carefully constructed world was starting to unravel. Good. Let her panic. That evening, Tyler dressed for the occasion, not flashy, but deliberate. A tailored navy blue suit, crisp white shirt, and a Rolex that subtly hinted at wealth without being gaudy. He only dressed this way when he wanted to be noticed. The Crimson Palace was pure indulgence, a playground for the elite where fortunes shifted in a single night. Gilded decor lined the walls, the scent of cigars and expensive perfume lingering in the air. In the VIP section, Victor Langston sat surrounded by sycophants, yes men and women draped in designer gowns, hanging onto his every word. He was mid-conversation, a glass of whiskey in one hand, a cigar in the other, when his gaze landed on Tyler. A slow grin spread across his face. Well, Victor exhaled a cloud of smoke, his tone dripping with amusement. "If it isn't the man himself." Tyler approached with the confidence of someone who had already won. "You still up for that game?" Victor chuckled, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "Cocky, aren't you?" Tyler smirked. "Confident." Laughter rumbled from the men around the table, but Victor's expression remained sharp, assessing. He assumed Tyler was just another gambler with an inflated sense of his own skill. "Perfect." Victor leaned back in his chair, tapping his cigar against the ashtray. "All right, Tyler. Private suite. Tomorrow night. High stakes." He took a slow sip of whiskey before adding with a smirk, "Hope your bankroll is as big as your ego." Tyler met his gaze steadily. "You'll find out soon enough." When he returned home, Jenna was waiting. She was dressed to impress, or rather, to distract. A sleek black slip clung to her frame, legs crossed elegantly, a drink in her hand. She looked composed, but there was tension in the way she held herself. "You really accepted?" she asked, her fingers swirling the liquid in her glass. Tyler rolled up his sleeves as he stepped closer, his movements slow, deliberate. Why wouldn't I? Jenna scoffed lightly before taking a sip. Because Victor isn't some random gambler, Tyler. He owns casinos. He knows how to play. Tyler's smirk was unwavering. So do I. She stood, closing the distance between them, placing a hand on his chest in a gesture meant to disarm. Slowly, she traced her nails down his shirt. You're walking into dangerous territory. Tyler caught her wrist, firm but not harsh, enough to make her hesitate. So are you. For the first time, something flashed in her eyes, fear. Just for a second. He let go and walked past her, heading toward the bedroom. Jenna stood motionless, her gaze locked on him, the realization hitting her. She was no longer in control. And for the first time since she had begun this dangerous game, fear settled deep within her. The VIP suite of the Crimson Palace was crafted for men like Victor Langston, the kind who thrived on power and the illusion of invulnerability. The room was a lavish display of excess, with rich mahogany-paneled walls and gold accents catching the glow of dim lighting, casting elongated, theatrical shadows. A grand chandelier loomed above a velvet-clad poker table, its soft illumination highlighting the exclusive audience gathered to witness the evening spectacle. Tyler entered with deliberate ease, his gaze sweeping across the room. Wealthy investors sat at the table, their arms draped around models who clung to aging billionaires with calculated charm. Security personnel remained stationed in the shadows, their watchful eyes missing nothing. The air was thick with the scent of premium whiskey and Cuban cigars, Victor's domain. But tonight, it was Tyler's stage. At the heart of it all, Victor lounged like royalty, his presence effortless, a tumbler of Macallan 25 swirling lazily in his hand. Beside him, Jenna was a vision in crimson, her dress sculpted to her frame, the plunging neckline ensuring every gaze in the room lingered. Her manicured fingers rested possessively on Victor's forearm, her nails tapping a rhythmic pattern against his skin. It was a silent display of ownership. Tyler didn't acknowledge it. With the composed detachment of a man who had played this game before, he adjusted his cufflinks, took his place at the table, and met Victor's stare with unreadable calm. Victor smirked, the amusement flickering in his sharp gaze. Didn't think you'd actually show up. Tyler leaned back in his chair, rolling his shoulders as if unconcerned. Would have been impolite to keep you waiting. Victor chuckled, savoring his drink. I respect a man who can accept defeat with dignity. Tilting his head slightly, Tyler responded with a measured tone. That's interesting. I was thinking the exact same thing. A ripple of low laughter moved through the spectators. Victor's smirk twitched, but he let the remark slide. With a subtle motion, he signaled the dealer. Let's begin. The first few rounds unfolded exactly as expected, a calculated massacre. Tyler played the part of an overconfident amateur, making reckless bets, calling too boldly, losing substantial amounts early. Each time he folded too soon or raised at the wrong moment, Victor's grin widened, his satisfaction unmistakable. Jenna watched from the sidelines, sipping from a gold-rimmed flute of champagne, her eyes gleaming with quiet delight. She believed she was witnessing her husband's humiliation, watching him unravel before her. She had no idea. Tyler wasn't losing. He was laying a trap. Every mistake, every poorly timed bluff, every stack of chips he slid across the table, it was all intentional. He let the losses accumulate, let Victor grow comfortable, allowed the arrogance to settle deep. By the third round, Victor was laughing freely, his confidence overflowing. He threw out taunts with ease. You sure you know how to play, Tyler? Tyler smirked, casually lifting his glass. Seems like I might be in over my head. The onlookers chuckled, and Victor's self-assurance swelled. Perfect. An hour passed, and Tyler leaned further into the act. He made a show of drinking more, letting the whiskey burn his throat, allowing the ice to clink dramatically in his glass. His movement slowed ever so slightly, his fingers lingering just a bit longer over his chips. He gave the appearance of a man unraveling. Victor noticed. So did Jenna. She leaned in, whispering something to Victor, her lips brushing against his ear. He chuckled in response, his hand briefly squeezing her thigh beneath the table. Tyler saw the gesture. He let it happen. Another round. Another significant loss. More laughter. Tyler tilted his head, rubbing his jaw as if frustrated. You're good, he admitted, voice laced with feigned defeat. Victor smirked, his satisfaction evident. I know. The moment was brief, but it was enough. Tyler watched as Victor settled further into his seat, his body language dripping with the confidence of a man who believed he was untouchable. Jenna, perched at his side, wore a triumphant smirk, watching Tyler's supposed downfall with barely contained excitement. They thought they were winning. Tyler let them believe it. 2 hours in, he made his move. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, his gameplay shifted. His decisions became sharper, his bets more precise. He allowed Victor to continue winning, but the resistance was there now, subtle, controlled. Small victories appeared here and there, just enough to go unnoticed. Victor, caught up in his own dominance, failed to see the shift. But Jenna? She noticed. Her posture stiffened slightly, her lips pressing together in thought. Her eyes narrowed just a fraction. She knew Tyler too well. Knew when something didn't add up. Tyler caught her watching him. For the first time that evening, a slow, composed smirk returned to his lips. She tensed, her fingers tightening around the stem of her glass. She knew. She just didn't know what. By the third hour, the game had reached its peak. The stakes had soared, Victor riding the high of his perceived dominance. He was taunting now, making bold plays, raising the stakes higher with each round. Jenna leaned in close, whispering in his ear once more, her voice a smooth encouragement. Greedy. Calculating. Raise it, she murmured, trailing her nails lightly down his wrist. Victor grinned, indulging her. You heard the lady. With a confident push, he shoved half his stack into the center. Tyler exhaled slowly, leaning forward for the first time. His gaze found Jenna's, locking onto hers with quiet intensity. His expression remained composed, unreadable. But in that moment, she saw it. The truth. Her smirk faded. Tyler hadn't been losing. He had been playing them all along. Victor let out a deep, amused laugh, shaking his head as he observed Tyler. What's wrong, Tyler? Can't take the heat, he teased. Tyler chuckled in response, not rushing. His fingers traced the edges of his chips, his head tilting slightly as he mused aloud. I was just thinking. How much does this place really mean to you, Victor? Victor scoffed, leaning back in his chair with an air of confidence. The Crimson Palace? This casino is my empire. A knowing smirk played on Tyler's lips. Then put it on the line. The room went still. A thick silence settled over the table as the weight of the challenge registered. Spectators exchanged nervous whispers. Jenna visibly tensed, her composed exterior cracking for the first time. Victor's expression darkened. Excuse me, he said, his voice sharp. Tyler leaned in, resting his elbows on the table, his voice carrying a quiet intensity. You think I don't belong at this table, don't you? Then prove it. Bet something real. His hand gestured toward the lavish space around them, the gleaming chandeliers, the private lounges, the very heart of Victor's empire. Bet the casino. Victor's jaw tightened. For the first time that evening, hesitation flickered in his eyes. Jenna's grip closed around his arm. Victor. No. Tyler studied her reaction, noting the fear in her eyes. She already understood what was coming. Victor clenched his teeth, then, with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes, shoved his stack of chips forward. You're finished, Tyler. Tyler remained unfazed, his smirk never wavering. We'll see. The dealer prepared the final hand. Inside the VIP suite of the Crimson Palace, the atmosphere thickened, charged with something heavier than tension, an impending storm waiting to break. Victor Langston sat with his usual confidence, one hand lazily wrapped around his whiskey glass, the other resting on Jenna's exposed thigh. He exuded the certainty of a man who believed he had already won. Jenna, however, knew better. Her smile had faded. She had played Tyler for a fool too many times before, but this time, something had shifted. She saw it in his stillness, in the way his fingers tapped the table just once before going motionless. A subtle signal, yet it sent a shiver down her spine. She didn't understand what it meant, but she could feel its weight, and it terrified her. The dealer, an older man with steady, practiced hands, methodically placed the 5 community cards face down. Tyler didn't glance at them. His focus remained on Victor, watching every micro-expression, the flicker of his eyes, the tightening of his jaw, the way he pressed his lips together in quiet calculation, attempting to conceal his tells. Victor had let his own ego carry him too far. Drunk on arrogance, he failed to notice the subtle shift occurring beneath him. Tyler calmly pushed his entire stack forward. All in. A ripple of murmurs spread through the spectators, excitement and shock crackling in the air. Victor leaned back, feigning careful observation of Tyler, but the excess whiskey in his system betrayed him. His pupils were dilated, his confidence overinflated. Jenna's nails dug into his arm, her fingers tightening in silent desperation. She wanted him to stop. Tyler saw the moment it happened, the realization dawning in Jenna's eyes, the instant she understood she had lost control. He met her gaze across the table, holding it with quiet intensity. His unspoken message was clear. I know everything. She inhaled sharply, gripping her champagne glass tighter. The dealer began revealing the community cards. The first card, 8 of spades. The second, Queen of hearts. The third, 5 of diamonds. Victor remained composed, but Tyler noticed the shift. His breathing hitched just slightly. He had something. The fourth card, King of clubs. Victor's smirk widened, his confidence surging. That was the moment Tyler knew Victor believed he had the winning hand. The dealer placed the final card onto the table. The ace of spades. Victor moved fast, flipping his cards over with a triumphant slam. King and Queen of hearts. Straight, he declared, already reaching for the chips. A wave of cheers erupted. A few men clapped Victor on the back, already celebrating his victory. Jenna exhaled in relief, her body visibly relaxing as tension drained from her. Tyler let them have their moment. Let them believe it was over. Then, with deliberate slowness, he placed his own cards face up on the table. Ace and 8 of spades. The room fell into a stunned hush. A moment of silence, then a wave of realization crashing over the crowd all at once. Tyler had a flush, ace high. A stronger hand than Victor's. He had won. Victor's smirk disappeared, his expression shattering into something rigid and unreadable. The energy in the room shifted, no longer filled with excitement, but a suffocating silence. Jenna's lips parted, her face drained of all color. Victor's grip on his whiskey glass tightened, his knuckles white with pressure. You. His voice was a quiet storm. Tyler leaned forward, dragging the mountain of chips toward himself with measured ease. He met Victor's gaze, his voice steady and sharp. You just lost your casino. Victor shot up from his seat, sending his chair crashing to the floor. That's bullshit. His voice roared through the suite. Security in the corner straightened, their eyes flicking between the two men. Tyler, still seated, continued stacking his chips as if Victor were nothing more than background noise. Victor's face twisted in fury. You cheated. His voice was hoarse with disbelief. No way in hell. Tyler finally locked eyes with Victor, a smirk playing at his lips once again. I thought you said I was out of my league. Victor's expression darkened instantly. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. Jenna, sensing the tension, rose from her seat and gently placed a hand on his arm. Victor. Enough, Victor snapped, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. His entire body tensed, barely containing the fury simmering beneath the surface. Tyler saw it, the unraveling. Victor had never experienced a loss this devastating, and it was clear he had no idea how to handle it. The dealer, unfazed by the charged atmosphere, leaned forward and slid the contract across the table. A legally binding document, one that bore Victor's own signature from before the game had even begun. Mr. Langston, according to the terms of your wager, the Crimson Palace now belongs to Mr. Tyler Cross. Victor stood frozen, his face unreadable. Jenna's nails dug into the fabric of his sleeve, her voice urgent. Victor, say something. But Victor didn't respond. His breathing was ragged, his posture rigid, like an animal cornered with no escape. Then, with a sudden burst of fury, he grabbed the nearest whiskey bottle and flung it across the room. It smashed against the wall, glass shards scattering across the floor like tiny, jagged stars. Jenna flinched at the sound. Tyler, however, remained unbothered. He merely smiled, tilting his head slightly. Careful, Victor, he murmured, his tone almost amused. Wouldn't want security dragging you out of your own casino, would you? Victor's chest rose and fell in quick, heavy breaths. His rage was palpable, but then, as if his entire body simply gave out, he sank back into his chair. Defeated. Hollow. Jenna stood motionless, glancing between the two men. First, at Victor, once powerful, now utterly ruined. A man who had gambled everything and lost. Then, at Tyler. And for the first time, she truly saw him. The husband she had underestimated. The man she had once admired and feared. She had placed her bets on the wrong player. Tyler adjusted his cufflinks with deliberate ease before picking up the signed contract. Folding it neatly, he slid it into his pocket. Then, he turned his attention to Jenna, stepping close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. Leaning down, his lips nearly brushed her ear. I know, he whispered, his voice cold as ice. Jenna's breath caught in her throat. Before she could respond, Tyler straightened and walked out of the room, the new owner of the Crimson Palace. Outside, the night air was thick and warm, carrying the faint scent of rain on the pavement. Tyler stepped onto the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, his pace slow and measured. Behind him, within that once glorious palace of wealth and pride, Victor Langston sat among the wreckage of his own downfall. But Tyler wasn't done. He could sense her presence before he heard her steps. Jenna was behind him, her heels clicking hurriedly against the concrete as she tried to catch up. Tyler, wait. His jaw tightened, but he didn't stop. She reached for his arm, her fingers grasping his sleeve. He allowed it for exactly 3 seconds, before turning sharply. The sudden movement made Jenna flinch, her hand falling away. Standing beneath the neon glow of the casino lights, she looked different now. The unwavering confidence from earlier was gone. The smugness? Erased. For the first time in months, she was not in control. Tyler let the silence stretch, watching as she fought for the right words. As she struggled between feigned innocence and genuine desperation. Finally, she spoke. How long have you known? Her voice was softer now, laced with calculated vulnerability, the same tone she used when she needed something. Tyler's lips curled into a slow, chilling smile. Long enough. Jenna swallowed, her gaze darting around as if searching for an escape, a savior. But there was no one. The crowds of Vegas moved past them, oblivious and different. To them, this was just another game, another wager. But Jenna had already lost. She shifted slightly, adjusting the thin strap of her dress. Tyler, listen, no. The single word sliced through the air, sharp and final. Jenna froze, blinking up at him. Tyler stepped closer, his breath steady, unlike hers. Leaning in just enough that his lips were near her ear, his voice was low and commanding. I want to hear you say it. Jenna's lips parted, her breath shaky. Say what? You know what? She exhaled slowly, glancing away. Tyler reached out, his fingers gently gripping her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze, the way Victor used to. Jenna stiffened, caught in the moment. You really think I didn't notice? Tyler whispered, his hold firm. You really think I didn't see the way you looked at him? Jenna's wide eyes flickered with something close to panic. Tyler's grip tightened slightly, just enough to make her breath hitch. You were with him, weren't you? Jenna hesitated. A single second too long. Tyler's smirk widened. I'll take that as a yes. She shook her head quickly, her composure faltering. Tyler, I made a mistake, okay. He let go of her chin and took a step back. A mistake. Jenna nodded desperately, grasping onto the lifeline. Yes, that's all it was. Just a stupid mistake. I thought you didn't care about me anymore, and Victor, he made me feel wanted. But it didn't mean anything, I swear. Tyler simply watched her. Then, without warning, he laughed. A dark, knowing chuckle that made Jenna's face go pale. You're lying, he murmured. Jenna's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Jenna remained silent, knowing deep down that Tyler was right. He nodded, his smirk unwavering. You never intended to come back to me, did you, Jenna? You were waiting. Waiting for Victor to replace me. Waiting for him to throw enough money your way so you could make your escape. Her hands clenched into fists, but she didn't argue. She couldn't. Her silence confirmed everything. Tyler exhaled, rolling his shoulders as if preparing to deliver a final blow. You told me it didn't mean anything, he mused, rubbing his chin. Then tell me, Jenna, what exactly did he promise you? Jenna's lips parted slightly, her gaze flicking to the side, a telltale sign. Tyler caught it instantly, his grin widening. A house. He scoffed, shaking his head. No, that's too small for you. You always wanted more. He leaned in slightly, his voice growing quieter but sharper. A private account? Expensive jewelry? A whole new life. Jenna's breathing quickened. Tyler leaned in even closer, his voice turning to ice. Or was it just the thrill of being with someone else? A flush of embarrassment spread across Jenna's cheeks as she clenched her jaw. You're being cruel, she managed to say, her voice tight. Tyler's grin didn't waver. No, sweetheart. I'm just playing by your rules. She turned away, swallowing hard. And then, grasping for anything left, she played her last desperate card. But I still love you. For a moment, Tyler simply stared at her. Then, suddenly, he laughed, a sharp, cold sound that made her chest tighten. It was the kind of laughter that told her everything was over. Jenna's eyes flickered with panic. Tyler. He lifted a hand, silencing her instantly. Here's what's going to happen, he said, stepping closer, too close. You're going to pack your things. You're going to walk out of my house and out of my life. His head tilted slightly, his voice even. And if you're lucky, I won't ruin you the way I ruined Victor. Jenna inhaled sharply, her nails digging into her palms. You can't just. Tyler's voice dropped to a whisper. Watch me. For the first time since meeting him, Jenna had nothing left to say. No excuses. No last-ditch efforts. Nothing. She was defeated, just like Victor. Tyler let the silence stretch between them before taking a step back. His final look at her carried no warmth, no anger, just cold indifference. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Jenna remained frozen, standing alone in the neon glow of Las Vegas, unmoving, like a discarded bet that hadn't paid off. He knew she was watching him go, but he didn't care. She was nothing to him now. The night buzzed around him, the chatter of tourists, the distant chime of slot machines, the electric hum of neon signs flickering against the humid air. A city built on illusions where people thought they could outsmart fate. Just like Jenna. Just like Victor. But fate didn't lose. Not anymore. Reaching into his pocket, Tyler pulled out a sleek black keycard. The Crimson Palace. His casino now. Jenna had bet against him, and she had lost everything. The divorce papers. The following morning, Tyler sat in his new corner office, gazing down at the casino floor. A brunette in a tight dress placed a cocktail on his desk, her fingers lingering on the glass. "Anything else, Mr. Cross?" she asked, her voice slow and honeyed. Tyler barely spared her a glance. "Not tonight." She hesitated for a moment before nodding and slipping out the door. He reached for the thick folder resting beside his whiskey glass, a legal document that sealed Jenna's fate. Divorce papers. His lawyer had outlined every detail. No financial support. No claim to his business. No rights to the condo. Nothing. A clean break. A complete erasure of her presence in his life. He had already taken care of the bank accounts, ensuring her name was removed from everything they once shared. Jenna was done. All that remained was delivering the papers. And he wanted to do it personally. That evening, Tyler pulled up to their former beachfront condo in his new Aston Martin, the one bought with Victor's money. The valet recognized him immediately, hurrying forward with a polite greeting. Without a word, Tyler tossed him the keys and headed inside. The elevator ride to the penthouse was quiet. It was still his penthouse, despite Jenna's desperate attempts to hold on to it. Stepping into the condo, he found her at the dining table, a half-empty bottle of wine beside her. She wore a red silk robe draped loosely over one shoulder, her hair slightly disheveled. She looked stunning. She looked desperate. Tyler placed the folder in front of her. She didn't move, just stared at it. "What's this?" Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "You already know," Tyler said flatly. Jenna hesitated, her fingers trembling as she flipped open the folder. Her eyes scanned the pages, her lips parting in shock. "No alimony," she whispered. "No house. No settlement." Tyler leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. "You don't deserve a settlement." Jenna's head snapped up, her eyes blazing. "You can't just—" "Yes, I can," he cut her off, his voice calm and unwavering. She shook her head, her breath unsteady. "Tyler, please. Let's just talk about this." Tyler smirked. "Now you want to talk?" She reached out, her fingers barely brushing against the back of his hand, light, hesitant, almost desperate. Her touch carried an unspoken plea. "I know I made a mistake, but we can fix this. We don't have to end things like this." Tyler, however, remained unmoved. He pulled his hand away without hesitation. Jenna flinched, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I still love you," she whispered, her voice fragile. A bitter chuckle escaped from Tyler, devoid of warmth. "No, you don't," he countered, his tone firm. Jenna's breath caught in her throat as he leaned in slightly, his gaze unwavering. "You love the idea of me," he murmured. "The comfort, the security, the life I created for us." His voice dropped lower, almost a whisper now. "But you never truly loved me." A tense silence settled between them. Jenna turned her face away, her jaw clenched. Deep down, she knew he was right. Without another word, Tyler straightened and slid a sleek black fountain pen across the table toward her. "Sign," he instructed. Jenna sat frozen, staring at the pen as if it carried the weight of everything they had once been. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she reached for it. Her grip was unsteady, her hesitation evident. Then, after drawing in a slow, resigned breath, she signed her name. It was done. Tyler picked up the folder, folding it neatly under his arm. Jenna's expression remained unreadable as she watched him. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she asked, "Was I ever enough for you?" Tyler halted at the door. For a moment, he stood still before turning his head slightly to glance at her one last time. Not even close. And with that, he walked away. For good. 2 weeks later, Tyler found himself in the exclusive VIP lounge of the Crimson Palace. A crystal glass of whiskey rested in one hand, while in the other, he held a royal flush, an unbeatable hand. A striking blonde lounged on his lap, the scent of her expensive perfume rich and intoxicating. Laughter and celebration filled the air as a group of high-stakes gamblers toasted in his honor, their glasses raised in admiration. Tyler had it all now. Wealth, power, absolute control. Jenna? She had become nothing more than a bad bet, a hand he had wisely folded before it cost him everything. And Tyler? He had won the game. Subscribe and stay ahead of the deceivers. Believe me, the next story makes this one seem like a fairy tale.